Up to the mountains and under the scorching sun, over the rivers, even when the waves roll on. God, I said I would follow by faith today and tomorrow. It's story time. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. It's Yanta, and this is, I think, episode 3 of the second series. Can't remember. 4, I don't remember. Don't listen to me. It's the next episode after the last episode, okay? The last episode, I think I was just talking about producing Bon Dieu Gum, my first single, and how that experience was for me and why I even ended up producing a song. Basically, it wasn't my choice. It was what I felt like God was leading me to do, was asking me to do, and I decided to be obedient. And how the experience was, because clearly I didn't know what I didn't know until now. I know that I've had been battling issues with myself and my worth, etc. Anyways, so this episode is about the lessons I've learned and getting what I think I want, but it wasn't really what I needed. However, God still allowed it temporarily, not just to teach me a lesson, but also to provide for me until the next. What I'm understanding now that I didn't know then was that there's a lot of odds I knew, but when you're not used to getting what you want or what you need, or always having to, settle, and a big opportunity to come, you often don't feel like you're worthy of it. So when it comes to the things of God, when it's from God, oftentimes it's going to appear bigger than you. And sometimes that's scary. And when it's someone like me who struggled with self-worth for a while, who didn't even know that, you never think you're good enough. So it's almost like my journey, I'm understanding now, had been a step-by-step towards the big thing, and pieces of puzzles to a big picture. And I didn't know that until maybe last month. Today is still the March 18th. And yes, I am recording all my videos in one day and hope to edit them in the next few weeks so that I can release them so I can be done with this. So this is the second video of the day. Anyways, so last video, once again, we talked about the single that I recorded. So this is towards the end. I released January 2021. And not obviously, but you guys will know around that time frame, I had completed my duty with the temporary job I had with 40 acres. So I was in between jobs and trying to figure out what's next, and was praying about it and really wanted to do something that I've always wanted to do, working with children, etc. So I'd been basically praying and begging God to show me a way to know what to do, where to applying everywhere. No one's reporting, and also feeling like, okay, I can't be applying for every single job either, because I'm supposed to be, in purpose. Eventually, there's always a dream, okay? By this point, you should know I'm a dreamer. This is how I know what to do next most of the time. So I had a dream I had two different dreams where I was working with kids, and it felt like it was a school. But it was different age group. So I was like, okay, am I supposed to be working with kids? Am I supposed to be working with a school? So I went in research and found that there was a school in Highland Park that was hiring. I applied for it, and they were paying good. And because of COVID, most schools had closed, but the new school year, or partial of the school year 2020, they were doing hybrid. 2021, they were doing a hybrid. So they needed assistants to be in the classroom, for a classroom where teachers weren't in person, but their students were partially in person and partially online. So those classrooms needed a person to be in, and there goes why they were hiring people like me. And they had a grant to help with that, and they were paying really good. So it's like, cha-ching, cool, applied. I think I applied in October, heard nothing from them. And so I must have had the dream way sooner. But I know I applied way sooner than I finally got a call. And then finally, maybe like end of January, it's like all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we need people to start like in the next 2 weeks. You applied for this. Are you still interested? Here's what you need to do your paperwork. I don't even think we had an interview. It was more like, if you're interested to say yes, here's the training, here's orientation, here's what you need to do for paperwork. I didn't even know how am I going to get there because I live in Chicago. This is Highland Park, a different city in Illinois, north of me. Although I was living north, I was living uptown at the time. So it was like everything was happening really fast. And yeah, that's how I started working at Highland Park. Huge school. I think they were like Jewish community-ish, but it was public school. Wealthy neighborhood. So yeah, I loved the school and I showed up and I did the best I can, the best way that I could the whole time until, the school year was over. I loved it. I loved showing up at the school with my little, and doing what I did. And I think eventually I ended up being at the COVID center where students, especially students who play sports, they were required to weekly take COVID tests. So I became an administrator there, an assistant there, and that became my main thing. So I was no longer in the classrooms, and the only time they had me in classrooms, it's when somebody else wasn't there and they needed a replacement. So that became my main job for the most part. And yeah, I did good at it. I was good at yelling at the kids, and the nurses oftentimes would be like, let's get Yanta. Yanta knows how to get them right. I was good at yelling at the kids, get them situated, getting them being polite. I've been working with kids what feels like basically my whole life. So it was like cakewalk for me. And, the nurses loved that. The staff loved that because I was good at it. And the more I was good at it, the more they were requiring me to be there. So it became my thing. So that school year ended in May 2021. And my lease is also expiring by July 2021 because remember, I moved there July 2020. So 1 year lease, it's expiring. So I need to know, am I staying or leaving? Well, I kept having dreams about different apartments. Like I was different spaces and I kept having a bunch of them. Didn't know what I meant. I was like, God wanted me to buy a house. What's going on? But because those dreams kept happening, it was my understanding that I wasn't staying in this apartment I was staying in, but I didn't know where else I was going to go. Like the school year is coming to an end. There's going to be a break between that school year and the next school year. And if they're renewing that contract, if I'll be able to get it. So I did make a friend who was, I'll just say that. I did make a friend, and eventually as the time came and I didn't know what I was doing, trying to figure out where to put my stuff, trying to find new apartment, but not finding the right price, and trying to apply, but also like waiting for like offer letter for a new position with the school. All of that is very tricky and it wasn't making sense. It's like, okay, God, how can I be moving forward? It'll be so much easier to stay here because they already know me. They've been patient with me. They've allowed me to they were willing to offer me to stay with a discount cheaper than my last rent. Like, come on. It seems smarter to be here, and they still help me because we had a storage and they were allowing me to get another storage to put. And mind you, I stayed in a small. I'm pretty sure the first video talked about how small my apartment was. So I was able to, some things I had to throw, not a lot, and other things somehow fit them with the little that I had into two storages in the apartment. So the friend that I met, who happened to live in the building, ended up letting me stay with her, and her lease was coming to an end too, so we ended up moving together, become roommate. But it was, from my understanding, always understood that I'm only here temporarily until I find my new place, whatever. Eventually I did get a job with the school again, a permanent job with the school, And I was excited, like once again, I've been wanting to work with kids. It used to be my childhood dream to be an administrator at a high school since high school. Since I was in high school, one of my dream was to work at a high school as an administrator. Yes, I didn't know if that was possible for me, and I tried different options, like, I was gonna go for a degree as a social worker, but part of that, I wanted to be able to do it for students in school, like middle school, high school, whatever, things like that. So I was excited about this job, y'all. I was excited, had my little computer, had to do my little report, showing up as the administrator. When I returned, it was clear that the reason why, let me rephrase that. I didn't know about the position. And when I finally saw about it, I did not think I was qualified. I was reached out by administration, encouraged to apply for it. So I did. Had the interview, and it was great. When I came back for that position, my old boss told me she was happy to have me, and I was like, yeah, I wasn't going to apply because X, Y, and Z. She's like, yeah, but you do great work. I was like, how do you know? She was like, a lot of people told me about you when you were here last. They told me I got a lot of good reports about. I'm like, who are these people talking about me? And then later on, I find that like the librarian who was where the COVID testing were happening at, which I was like the main assistant there. She was one of the people who was mentioning my name in meetings and I was like, she told me like, when people like, I was telling her, I said, that's so weird because I never think people would notice, and I'm always trying to hide. And she said, when your light shine bright and you do great work, you can never hide. And that stuck with me and kind of like sparked something on the inside of me to have heard somebody like that. And her in particular, I looked up to because she was over media, and as a filmmaker, I would love to be able to work in a film, in a media department. They had an amazing media department. You hear me? Coolest technology, latest technology. I mean, like, I wanted to be a part of that. So I was happy that, she saw me that way, because I'm like, maybe moving forward, I can slide my way into that department. For right now, I'm gonna just get in, right? So that's what happened. I worked there, did the position, and then towards the end of that year, 2021, they decided to make COVID vaccine a requirement. Well, I must say, before COVID vaccine became a thing, I had been praying whether or not I should take the vaccine or not. And I felt like my answer was no. Here's what happened. Yeah, no, there's always a dream. I had a dream that a family member got the vaccine and ended up having to be at the ER because there was blood clot done by the vaccine. She eventually left without doctor's order, and an old friend of the family, church member, while we were releasing, looked at me straight up in the eyes and said, you better not take the vaccine. So I woke up and I prayed about it. I'm like, Lord, like, is that your way of telling me no? Because I'd been praying about, should I take this for a really long time before it was even a thing. And so I felt like that was my answer, that me, Yanta Tanya, Antoine, not nobody else, not because something's wrong with the vaccine, shouldn't take it as a person. Like this was an individual thing. So I was okay. I mean, I know I have some health concern. So like maybe that was God telling me that maybe for me, I may have some issue if I take it. I didn't know what those issues would be, but that's what I felt like. So when it became 2 weeks later from that dream, they ended up having like things coming out about it potentially giving blood clots. And I'm like, wait a minute. I couldn't have known this because this information wasn't out yet. I'm not a doctor, and I've always taken the vaccine. I've never been anti-vaccine. So what? So when they made that requirement later on that year, it was like, well, it's been months that I was clear that I wasn't supposed to take it. So in order for me to decide not to take it, I would have to feel like God saying, now I'm clear too. So I decided I was going to be obedient, and it broke my heart. They gave us a basically like options that you can even take. Like we went on probation for like a month and give you time to take it, or you have to have like either a religious proof as to why you can't. And the SDA church already made it clear that they're not anti-vaccination and they're not giving no permission or health one. Well, I gave it to my doctor at the time, and he didn't sign it. He was like, in good conscience, he can't. So I really didn't have any proof as to why I can't take this. So I had to give up that job, and it broke my heart. But I was in probation, and I realized halfway through probation, like, wait a minute, I know I'm not going to take this right now. And they're holding my paycheck? No. So I resigned. That was hard. But I was already with my friend, who's now roommate, temporarily. Was still applying for a new apartment, and got denied to one. And when I got denied, I brought that up because I wasn't trying to stay all up in her space for too long. So I was explaining to her like why things haven't moved forward, blah blah blah. And then it just got sour from there. Apparently there was a misunderstanding, and we just wasn't seeing eye to eye, and it just was like I no longer wanted to be there. It felt like, it felt so coming home, that I remember telling a friend that I had more peace at the shelter, which is sad. And I was excited because I wanted to have friends so bad, and I wanted a sense of community. And I'll say there are characteristics, trait that I noticed about that person that I didn't think would affect me. And they were showing, and I realized that my discernment, I need to listen, because you be seeing things and you don't be listening to yourself. And maybe had you listened, even though you probably would have moved in with that person, you wouldn't feel the way you feel now had you understand that this is who they are, this is how they are, and accepted that fact and move accordingly, basically. Move accordingly. And not expect anything. Anyways, eventually, through prayer, that situation had made me feel very inconsiderate. The misunderstanding and the way I felt treated, which eventually led me to therapy. Because I kept thinking, like, there has to be something wrong with me as to why I attract people's treatment that way. Like, I'm so considerate and so giving, and I always feel like people don't do the same for me. There must be something about me. So then I submit myself to therapy, and hence begins my self-care in a way that I didn't think was even possible. I prayed about the exact therapist I wanted. I told God I wanted a Black woman believer. And honestly, I didn't think that was possible. And God pulled out the big gun, because my therapist is definitely a Black woman who's a believer and also old enough to be my mom. So yeah, it took a while from the time I applied, got submitted to the program, to actually meeting with her, like a couple months, 3 or 4 months, if I'm not mistaken. But being able to get into a program and getting access to therapy, and it being paid by my insurance, chef kiss. And having one of the best therapists in that program. She's the therapist that trained all the new therapists. God pulled out the big guns for me. Okay. And that had been such a blessing. And it's thank God to the time frame beforehand, when I had the first apartment and I left the first job, that was temporary, and I had to look for help, right? And that help, the social worker allowed me to apply for food assistance and health insurance. That what looked like an inconvenience and a scary moment allowed me to have access to health insurance, that allowed me to have access to a therapist. That had been a blessing for me. So anyways, with that story, with staying at my friend's house, eventually I needed to move. And the following year, when I finally got to see the therapist, she made it clear that, yeah, that is not how a friend should be like, because we're in the middle of winter. It's cold outside. You guys have been doing this together. Like, that is not proper treatment. And eventually she was making it clear that I can't stay here. She didn't say it, but some of the things she did made it to me was like, yeah, okay. Prayed, and I felt God was leading me to a specific neighborhood south of Chicago, which I had no interest in doing because I was living north. Even when I moved with her again, when we moved together, it became roommates. We were even more north. And my goal was to always stay as north as possible because I was working at Highland Park. Highland Park is a suburb north of Chicago. So the more north I was, the better it was for me. But then at this point, I'm no longer working at Highland Park. So it's like, well, where I stay is all, all in the table. But I wasn't finding anything north, and I got denied the one apartment that I wanted. And I felt like God was showing me a specific space look. And I kept looking, and I thought I found it, and I didn't. And it was like wild. And I realized, well, part of those look was like him trying to get me to move with my roommate. Okay, cool. And then I'm praying again. And then eventually I kept seeing just one specific neighborhood, but it was south. And I had no interest in moving south because, I was told to be afraid of Chicago, and north is the safe side. So why in the world would I be moving south? Until I heard a word about God is leading you to a place, and where he's going to send you, everything you need is going to be there. So I'm like, all right, God, I'm going to stop being, whatever. So I'm going to consider this place. And then, but also I had no choice to move. So at this point, wherever is better than the streets. Okay. So I did my due diligence and I moved south side of Chicago. Yeah. Anyways, so that'll be it for that. And I think the next video would basically be about how moving and being obedient had been such a blessing, and the real starting of self-care, and basically up to date. With that being said, see you in the next video. Deuces. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, and then subscribe. Put your bell notification on. Goodbye.